Ma'am, the designated queue for guests and spouses is located on the opposite side of this reception area, stated the captain. He kept his eyes fixed on his manifest, his voice conveying a tired seniority that felt more assumed than genuinely earned. Only his finger moving down the roster indicated he was engaged. This specific check-in station is for personnel on active duty only. Melissa Ward stood completely motionless, her hands resting calmly before her. She focused on the young Marine officer, observing the immaculate tailoring of his dress blues, the gleam on his footwear, and the single silver bar denoting his junior rank. He epitomized Marine Corps sharpness, yet he consistently avoided direct eye contact with the individual he was attempting to redirect. The hotel foyer around them thrummed with the disciplined excitement typical of a Marine Corps birthday ball. Polished marble floors reflected the grand chandeliers and the scarlet and gold official banners hanging from the upper levels. A string quartet performed muted classical music, providing a gentle counterpoint to the bursts of sharp laughter from Marines greeting one another. Melissa's royal blue gown created a distinct pocket of civilian color within the ocean of formal uniforms, underscoring her status as an obvious outlier. "I am quite certain I am at the correct location, Captain," she responded. Her voice was level, carrying a subtle authority that caused the two lance corporals positioned near the officer to look up quickly. The captain finally raised his head, his confident gaze sweeping over her appearance. He registered her features, elegant attire, and jewelry, yet his look lacked any genuine deference. A slight, almost undetectable smirk settled on his face, suggesting he believed he had the entire situation perfectly assessed. "With the utmost respect, ma'am," he started, using the common preamble to blatant dismissal. "The lane reserved for active duty is, predictably, for those currently serving. Should your spouse be registering, you are welcome to wait here for him. I anticipate his arrival momentarily." He then addressed a nearby junior Marine. "Martine, locate a seat for Mrs. Pause for name." "My name is Melissa Ward," she offered, her tone entirely consistent. She presented her identification. "And my attendance is not contingent upon my spouse." The officer, identified as Captain Davis, accepted the card with an air of long-suffering tolerance, expecting a civilian dependent badge to confirm his assumptions and quickly terminate the dull exchange. However, the card's details caused him to momentarily hesitate. It was clearly a military ID marked as retired, and the data displayed caused a flash of confusion. He flipped the card repeatedly, rubbing its surface as if attempting to erase an error. "This identification is classified as retired," he articulated slowly, speaking with a tone one uses to clarify basic facts for a novice. "This particular function is exclusive to our battalion. We rarely host retired personnel unless they are specifically designated as guests of honor. Are you perhaps our appointed guest of honor?" He delivered the question with an insincere, exaggerated smile, ensuring the deliberate sarcasm was apparent to his subordinates. The second lance corporal barely contained his laughter. "You could certainly use that designation," Melissa confirmed, drawing upon a seemingly endless reserve of composure. Captain Davis was now visibly reveling in his position, performing a demonstration of professional rigor for his subordinate audience. "All right, ma'am, let's process this logically." He deliberately placed her ID flat on the table and leaned forward, lowering his voice into a stage whisper intended to carry throughout the lobby. "These events can sometimes cause confusion. Is it remotely possible you have come to the wrong function? The VFW is hosting their dinner next weekend. A simple oversight, perhaps." Marines waiting in line behind Melissa began to shift uncomfortably. They sensed the emerging tension and the captain's drawn-out effort to humiliate her. Though trained to uphold the chain of command, they recognized the potential for a spectacular error, yet remained silent, offering passive assent to the captain's authority. "I can assure you, Captain," Melissa replied, her voice maintaining its measured calm, "I am at the correct Marine Corps event." "Yes, well, your name is conspicuously absent from the active duty register," he countered, tapping his manifest for emphasis. "And it does not appear on the short list of distinguished visitors I was provided." He settled back, folding his arms in a gesture of finality. "Therefore, you understand my dilemma. My priority is to strictly adhere to security procedures." He no longer viewed himself as a mere checkpoint officer. He envisioned himself as a defender of the ball's integrity against an unauthorized intruder. "Perhaps the documentation you have is incomplete," Melissa suggested gently. "Could you verify the name again?" "Ward Melissa." "I have already verified it, ma'am," he insisted, his patience exhausted. "Twice. Your name is not listed. I now have a substantial line of Marines waiting to check in, Marines who are authorized to be here. So, if you would kindly," he motioned toward the exit. The second Lance Corporal, appearing anxious, focused intently on a stack of programs, avoiding her gaze. He felt the rising dread. The woman's serene composure was far more intimidating than the captain's increasing bluster. "Captain Davis," Melissa stated, her voice still quiet, but now sharpened with an unyielding edge of steel. "I require you to consult your full master guest roster one last time, the comprehensive document supplied by Base Command, not this limited check-in sheet." The commanding directness of her tone, the precise use of his rank and name, and the specific instruction briefly caught him off guard. He immediately recognized the subtle shift in authority, and his reaction was to forcefully reassert his rank. "Ma'am, I am entirely unconvinced of your identity," he snapped, his cheeks flushing slightly. "I am the appointed officer in charge of this security checkpoint, and I am telling you explicitly that your name is absent from the list. Now, for the final time, step aside." He picked up her identification, holding it gingerly between his fingers as though it were contaminated. His eyes narrowed onto a small lapel pin affixed to her royal blue top, just over her heart. It was a modest, understated ornament, a small gold frame featuring a blue center and a tiny bronze oak leaf cluster. To him, it appeared to be cheap, meaningless civilian jewelry. "What precisely is this supposed to signify?" he demanded, gesturing at the pin. "Some inexpensive souvenir from a base gift shop?" In reality, the pin was the Joint Meritorious Unit Award, the oak leaf cluster denoting a second citation. As his dismissive question hung in the air, the hotel's polished lobby seemed to dissolve around Melissa. The scents of floor wax and perfume were instantly replaced by the oppressive odors of diesel, ozone, and hot metallic dust. The soft string music faded, superseded by the shrill whine of generators and the frantic, chaotic chatter of tactical radios within a combat operations center. She was no longer at the hotel. She was back in Anbar province, Iraq, a lieutenant colonel hunched over a sand table, the flickering glow of a laptop screen illuminating the exhausted faces of her logistics staff. They had been working for 36 consecutive hours to reroute supplies after a critical enemy attack had severed their main logistics corridor. Ammunition, water, blood, medical supplies, everything needed by the frontline battalions was dangerously low. The operation was on the verge of failure. The solution had been her brilliant, highly unorthodox plan to push convoys through a sector previously deemed impassable. The immense risk had paid off, saving the offensive and countless lives. That small, unremarkable pin he was mocking was a unit citation awarded for that precise moment of strategic genius under fire, a symbol of the crushing responsibility and pressure he could never understand. Melissa's focus snapped back to the present. The captain's conceited expression was still fixed on her, awaiting a response she refused to provide, letting the tension escalate. Across the opulent lobby, positioned discreetly by a marble column, stood Sergeant Major, retired, Thomas Collier. He was on assignment, hired by the hotel for his specialized expertise in event security. For over 10 minutes, Collier had been observing the growing debacle at the check-in desk with escalating alarm. Though he could not hear the entire dialogue, he expertly interpreted the non-verbal cues. An arrogant, chest-puffed junior officer clashing with a civilian woman who maintained an unbreakable poise unmatched in civilian life. Then, a fragment of conversation carried clearly across the vast room. "My name is Melissa Ward." The name impacted Collier with jarring clarity. "Ward!" His memory immediately cycled through 30 years of accumulated faces and names. He didn't initially recognize her appearance, but the reputation associated with the name Ward was unforgettable. She was known as the Oracle at Logistics Command, a legendary officer who had retired a few years prior as a Brigadier General. A wave of cold dread washed over Collier. He watched Captain Davis's dismissive gestures, which reeked of profound disrespect. This was a slow-motion disaster. Collier knew intervening directly was a breach of protocol. Yet, this transcended simple veteran disrespect. This was an insult leveled directly at a general officer. He swiftly pulled his phone, his fingers rapidly composing a text to the battalion executive officer, a major with whom he had previously served. His message was clipped and urgent. "Sir, you are required at the main entrance checkpoint immediately. Captain Davis is committing a grave error." The major queried instantly. "What mistake?" Collier typed his grave reply. "Never assume the unassuming woman in civilian clothes isn't the guest of honor, and a general." He sent the message. Help had been mobilized. Collier watched the unfolding scene, his heart sinking as Captain Davis made a final aggressive move, reaching for his radio as if to summon security. Too late, Collier thought grimly. Simultaneously, within the opulent Cacoponis ballroom, the battalion's executive officer, Major Graham, finished reading the Command Sergeant Major's urgent text, experiencing a shock of pure adrenaline. He instantly cut a path through the throngs of celebratory guests toward the command table, where the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Roberts, was deep in conversation with the base chief of staff. "Sir, we have a critical failure," Graham stated urgently, speaking low. Without waiting for a verbal reply, he thrust his phone into his commander's hands. Lieutenant Colonel Roberts scanned the message, his genial expression morphing into one of grave alarm. "General Ward is our keynote speaker," he whispered, acknowledging the gravity. He looked to the base chief of staff, a colonel whose face had turned stark white. The colonel immediately seized an iPad, bypassing the standard guest register for the comprehensive distinguished visitor file. He located her entry, and the screen populated with her full biography. Brigadier General Melissa Ward, retired. The document detailed an impeccable career forged in high-pressure command roles across the globe, listing major commendations. "God in heaven," the colonel gasped. He stared at Roberts. "Your Captain Davis is currently at the main entrance, severely reprimanding the guest of honor." No more needed to be said. The small cluster of senior officers began moving in seamless unison, their faces grim, cutting a path of rigid, controlled fury through the unsuspecting celebratory crowd. Returning to the lobby, Captain Davis was now operating on sheer desperation. His command had been challenged, his efficiency derailed, and his subordinates were displaying sympathy. He needed definitive closure. "Ma'am, I have extended every reasonable opportunity for cooperation," he announced, deliberately loud for the surrounding onlookers. "For the record, you lack an invitation. Your name is absent from my authorized manifest, and you have refused to comply. I am therefore compelled to declare this identification fraudulent." He allowed that final, poisonous accusation to resonate clearly. "Falsifying a military ID constitutes a serious federal offense. Lance Corporal Martinez, you are ordered to contact base security. Instruct them to forcibly remove this woman from the premises." The young Lance Corporal froze instantly, panic wide in his eyes. He was trapped between the direct command of a superior officer and the terrifying realization that he was about to participate in a catastrophic professional blunder. In that precise instant of suspended inaction, the grand double doors leading to the ballroom flew open with an explosive force. Lieutenant Colonel Roberts, the battalion commander, surged into the lobby, followed closely by the base chief of staff and Major Graham. They advanced with a fierce, unified intensity that immediately extinguished all ambient noise. The string quartet stumbled, the waltz note dying abruptly. Every person in the lobby turned, struck by the massive, concentrated presence of high command authority. The senior officers did not decrease speed until they reached the check-in table. Lieutenant Colonel Roberts totally bypassed his captain. His gaze was fixed exclusively on Melissa Ward. He stopped abruptly just 3 feet in front of her. He stopped abruptly, precisely 3 feet from her, and executed the sharpest, most meaningful salute of his career. His hand sliced into position with an audible snap that resonated in the silent, massive lobby. "General Ward," he pronounced, his voice ringing with a reverent respect. "On behalf of our entire command, please accept my most sincere and deepest apologies for this inexcusable delay. It is an extraordinary honor to host you tonight." The base chief of staff and Major Graham immediately mirrored his salute. 3 high-ranking officers stood rigidly at attention, honoring a woman in a simple blue dress. Captain Davis stared, his jaw slackening, his worldview violently inverted. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale and clammy. The 2 lance corporals appeared utterly spectral. The lieutenant colonel maintained the salute for a deliberate moment before lowering his hand. He then pivoted slowly, his gaze, now cold and hard as granite, locking onto Captain Davis. "Captain," he stated, his voice dangerously subdued. "Did you realize you were addressing Brigadier General Melissa Ward, the logistics architect of Operation Desert Trident, the officer who literally authored the textbook on expeditionary sustainment required reading at your basic school?" He did not wait for an answer. He turned back to General Ward, his voice once again warm and respectful, but loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "Ma'am, I was just reviewing your biography to prepare for your introduction. I hope you don't mind if I share how thrilled we are to have a leader of your caliber, a recipient of the Defense Superior Service Medal and the former Deputy Commander of Marine Corps Logistics Command, as our guest of honor tonight." A wave of whispers swept through the assembled crowd. The commander's voice, a low and lethal growl more terrifying than any shout, finally bore down entirely on Davis. "Captain," Lieutenant Colonel Roberts began, "you will report to my office at 0600 Monday morning in your Service A uniform. You will present a 1-page handwritten letter of apology to General Ward and a 5-page handwritten essay detailing the customs and courtesies owed to distinguished and retired personnel. Furthermore, you will escort your entire chain of command to explain this profound and total failure of professional judgment. You did not look at a person and verify who they were. You looked and saw only what you assumed. You are a disgrace to this corps." Before the commander could proceed with the verbal dismantling, General Ward calmly raised a hand. "Lieutenant Colonel, that's enough," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the high tension. She turned her full attention to Captain Davis, who flinched, bracing for fury. There was no anger in her eyes, only a deep, weary disappointment, far more painful. "Captain," she stated, "the rank and the uniform may change with time, but the core standards of this corps do not. Your obligation here was to verify credentials, not to validate your own prejudice. The very core of effective leadership is not the issuing of orders. It is the ability to see people clearly. Be better." Her words were a surgical, final piece of instruction from a superior officer. As she spoke of the enduring standards, a fleeting image superimposed itself on the hotel lobby. Herself, as a mud-caked, exhausted second lieutenant at Quantico, hearing a grizzled gunnery sergeant growl over her screaming muscles. "The standard is the standard, Lieutenant. Meet it." That single, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement she received upon crossing the finish line was the true meaning of the Marine Corps. In the weeks following the birthday ball, the ripple effects of Captain Davis's mistake spread throughout the base. A new mandatory training module on protocol and professional interaction was implemented for all personnel assigned to event duties. Captain Davis was formally reprimanded and quietly reassigned to a dreary staff position in the base's records department, a paper-pushing job that was a clear and humiliating dead end for an ambitious officer. About a month later, Davis was in the base library researching a tedious report. He looked up from a dusty manual and saw General Ward sitting at a table near the window, reading a novel. His heart hammered in his chest. He could have just walked away, but her words to him in the lobby, "Be better," echoed in his mind. Taking a deep breath, he stood up and walked over to her table. She looked up as he approached, her expression neutral. "General Ward," he began, his voice barely a whisper. He stood at a respectful position of attention. "Ma'am, I just wanted to apologize again in person. What I did was inexcusable. There's no excuse for my behavior. It was unprofessional, disrespectful, and beneath the conduct of a Marine officer. I am truly and deeply sorry." Melissa Ward studied him for a long moment. She saw the genuine remorse in his eyes, the deep shame that had settled into his features. She closed her book and gestured to the chair opposite her. "Sit down, Captain." He hesitated, then sat, perching on the edge of the seat. "You made a mistake, a big one," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You let assumption override procedure. It's a dangerous habit for a leader. You will pay a professional price for it. The question is, what will you learn from it?" "I'll learn to follow the list, ma'am," he said quickly. She shook her head gently. "No, that's too simple. You'll learn to look at every single person you meet, from a private to a general, and afford them the baseline of dignity and respect they deserve as a human being. Your job is to lead Marines. You can't do that if you're blinded by your own prejudices. Don't waste this lesson, Captain." She picked up her book, a quiet signal that the conversation was over. Captain Davis stood, offered a quiet, "Thank you, ma'am," and walked away, feeling the weight of his mistake, but also for the first time, a small, fragile seed of hope. The stories of women like General Ward are a testament to the strength and resilience of all our service members. They met the standard and then set a new one. To honor their legacy and hear more stories of valor, like and subscribe to She Wore the Stars.